A quiet neighborhood in Tokyo. It was around 10 p.m. A local gang of delinquents was standing in the middle of the street with their bikes, causing their usual chaos. Their leader, Tatsuo, was making the most noise. Everything seemed perfectly normal, but in the very next second, without a single match, without a single spark, Tatsuo's head suddenly burst into flames. The fire spread so fast and burned so hot that nobody even had time to react. There was no gasoline. Nobody threw a bomb. Tatsuo screamed in the middle of the street, and within seconds, he was burned to ash. When the police arrived, all that was left for evidence was scorched pavement. The media went wild. They dubbed it spontaneous human combustion. People thought it was dark magic or the wrath of God. But did death really fall from the sky? Or was this the chilling, calculated master plan of a human being? Welcome to Detective Diaries. Today, we are opening the first and most terrifying file from the Detective Galileo series, The Burning. To understand this impossible murder, we have to rewind a few months before that night. Directly across from where Tatsuo burned to death was an old house. Inside lived an elderly woman who was completely blind and paralyzed, confined to her bed. She was cared for by her nephew, a quiet, incredibly shy man who worked at a local factory. His entire world was reduced to his shifts at the factory and nursing his dying aunt. But their quiet existence was poisoned by Tatsuo and his gang. Every single night, Tatsuo's gang would gather directly below that house. They took the mufflers off their exhausts and revved their engines to deafening levels. To a normal person, the noise was annoying. But to that sick, blind woman, the piercing sound was physical torture. She would cry out in pain, but she couldn't do anything. The nephew begged the police for help. The police would show up, give the boys a light warning, and leave. And the second the squad car drove away, the boys would rev their engines even louder, as if mocking him. The law had failed. And when the law fails to protect the innocent, even the most gentle person is pushed to do something horrific. He made a decision. If the police wouldn't silence those boys, he would silence them permanently. But he was weak. He couldn't fight them in the street. So, he didn't attack with his hands. He attacked with his mind. Tokyo Police Detective Shunpei Kusanagi was hitting a brick wall. He interrogated the neighbors. He interrogated the quiet nephew. The nephew calmly stated, "I was inside giving my aunt her medicine. I don't know anything." And Kusanagi had absolutely no logical reason to suspect him. During the exact second Tatsuo caught on fire, the nephew was locked inside his house. He never stepped foot on the street. Did someone shoot a chemical bullet from a sniper rifle miles away? Kusanagi's brain was short-circuiting. When logic fails and a murder becomes completely impossible, you don't need the police. You need a man for whom the entire world is just a mathematical equation. Kusanagi rushes to his old college buddy, Professor Manabu Yukawa. The police secretly call him Detective Galileo. Yukawa doesn't care about human emotions. He has no interest in justice. He only despises things that are illogical. Kusanagi pitches him the story of dark magic and spontaneous combustion. Yukawa takes a sip of his instant coffee, pushes his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and says, "What you call the supernatural, Kusanagi, is just science your small brain cannot comprehend yet." When Yukawa arrives at the street, he doesn't look on the ground for gunpowder or footprints. His eyes calculate the angles of the buildings, the utility poles, and the vending machines. Suddenly, he spots a tiny reflective mirror high up on a wooden pole. A cold smile creeps across his face. He had solved the mystery. He turns to Kusanagi and says, "Your suspect really didn't step outside his house. He didn't use a gun or a bomb. He weaponized light." Pay close attention, because this is where the mystery turns into a sci-fi thriller. That nephew worked at a metal processing plant. For months, he had been quietly smuggling out scrap components from industrial lasers. Working in his bedroom, he assembled a high-power carbon dioxide laser, a laser powerful enough to cut through sheet metal in seconds. But there was one massive flaw. A laser travels in a perfectly straight line, and the spot where Tatsuo stood was completely out of the nephew's line of sight. There was a corner in the way. So, how did the nephew bend the laser beam? This is where the killer's true, terrifying genius came out. He didn't bend the laser, he reflected it. In the days leading up to the murder, the nephew secretly glued tiny, high-quality mirrors to a telephone pole, a billboard, and a vending machine down the street. He calculated the exact angles of incidence and reflections so perfectly that all those mirrors combined to form an invisible sniper rifle. On the night of the murder, the moment Tatsuo revved his bike, the nephew fired the invisible infrared laser from his room. The beam shot out the window, bounced off the first mirror, ricocheted to the second, hit the third, and focused dead center on Tatsuo's head. And why did it ignite so fast? Because the cheap hair gel Tatsuo used was highly flammable. The moment that terrifying thermal heat hit the gel, boom, he burned alive. When Yukawa laid out the mirrors and the mathematical diagram of the laser on the table in the police interrogation room, the quiet man finally broke inside. He didn't deny it. Tears simply began to stream down his face. He looked at Kusanagi and sobbed. "You're the police, right? I told you their noise was killing my aunt. You did nothing. I didn't do this because I enjoy killing. I did it so the only family I have left could take her final breaths in peace." A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the room. Kusanagi realized that the failure of the system had forced a gentle, caring man to turn into a monster. Yukawa quietly slipped out of the room. He had found the truth. And for a scientist, what happens after the truth is exposed is none of his business. Detective Galileo's first case wasn't just a murder mystery. It was a terrifying warning. When everyday people gain access to advanced science and the law refuses to help, anyone can rain down the wrath of God from their bedroom window. Kusanagi thought this was the most impossible case he would ever see. But he was wrong. Because the very next killer wouldn't use light. He would use a mask forged from molten metal. The metal mask. A locked room murder where the killer leaves behind a perfect, solid metal cast of the victim's own face right next to the body. Why? We'll decode that in episode 2. If you loved this deep dive storytelling, hit that like button and subscribe. If the police had abandoned you, what would you have done in that nephew's place? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next case. Keep questioning the impossible right here on Detective Equations